Think about the last time you walked out of a grocery store feeling fine about what you spent. Actually try to remember it. You probably can't. And you've heard the word inflation 1,000 times, but that explanation never quite matches the feeling. Because inflation is supposed to be a number, a percentage, something temporary that economists track on charts. What you're experiencing doesn't feel like a percentage. It feels like something broke and nobody is telling you what it actually was. They're right. Nobody is. Start with the number everyone throws around, the official inflation rate, the one quoted by politicians and printed on front pages every month. Here's the problem. It measures a basket of goods, a theoretical collection of products economists decided represents average spending. And that basket gets adjusted regularly. Sounds reasonable until you understand what the adjustment actually means. When beef gets too expensive, the basket quietly swaps in chicken. When chicken spikes, it moves to eggs. The logic is that consumers substitute cheaper options when prices rise, so the measurement should reflect that. But what they're actually measuring when they do this is no longer the cost of living. They're measuring the cost of a continuously downgrading life. The number stays manageable because the standard being measured keeps getting quietly lowered. This is why the official rate and your experience at checkout never match. You're not measuring the same thing. The government measures what a person spends while adapting downward. You're measuring what it costs to maintain the life you were already living. But that's only half the story. The other half has a name most people have never heard: shrinkflation. Same price, same packaging, same brand, less inside. The chocolate bar that was 200 grams is now 180 grams. The juice that was a full liter is now 850 milliliters. The toilet roll that had 200 sheets now has 180. Companies do this deliberately because they know one thing with certainty. You notice a price increase immediately. Your brain catches the number changing before you finish reading it, but you do not notice a 10% reduction in product weight. You don't weigh your cereal box at the store. The loss is invisible at the moment of purchase, and by the time something feels slightly off, you're already home and not quite certain you're not imagining it. That gap between what you notice and what you don't is worth billions annually to consumer goods companies. They have studied it. They know exactly how much they can reduce before complaints start, and they operate right at that edge continuously. Then there's a third mechanism, the hardest one to see because it doesn't look like a price change at all: quality degradation. Same price, same size, but what's inside quietly gets worse. Ingredients get cheaper, materials get thinner, components get substituted for lower grade versions that look identical but last half as long. The phone charger that lasted 2 years now frays in 4 months. The jeans that survived 3 years now thin out after 1. The appliance your parents bought once and kept for 15 years needs replacing every 4. You just end up buying more often, replacing things you feel like you just bought, spending in a rhythm that feels faster than it used to without being able to explain why. Now add with the last 5 years introduced at a scale never seen before. Corporate profit margins during and after the pandemic hit record highs. Companies raised prices citing supply chain disruptions, then kept those prices elevated long after their own costs came back down. Grocery chains and food manufacturers posted profit margins significantly higher than their pre-pandemic averages, which means a portion of what you pay every week is not the cost of making the product. It's margin added during a period when consumers had no leverage because everything was expensive everywhere simultaneously. And once a price rises, it never comes back down. Companies don't voluntarily lower prices when costs normalize. The price becomes the new floor. The next disruption becomes the next excuse to raise it again. And underneath all of that sits something almost nobody talks about directly: housing, healthcare, education, childcare, the costs that determine whether a life is stable or stressful. These have been rising at rates that dwarf general inflation, not for years, but for decades. A house that cost 3 times the average salary in 1980 now costs 8 or 9 times in most cities. A year of college, manageable with a summer job, now requires decades of debt. Healthcare that was a minor line item is now one of the largest annual expenses for millions of families. These numbers didn't move because of supply chains. They moved because of policy decisions and the long prioritization of asset prices over wage growth. The people who owned assets got wealthier as they appreciated. The people who needed to buy them got squeezed from both sides. So when you're standing at checkout feeling like something is wrong that nobody is explaining clearly, you're not bad at math. You're correctly sensing multiple systems running at the same time. An inflation measure tracking a downgrading standard. Shrinkflation, removing value invisibly from products you've trusted for years. Quality degradation, making everything wear out faster. Corporate margins expanded during collective vulnerability and never returned. And essential costs drifting far beyond what wages have ever matched. Each one alone would be noticeable. All of them together, hitting the same wallet at the same time, creates something that feels less like a statistic and more like a slow erosion of the life you thought you were building. The number on your receipt isn't lying to you, but the single word they keep using to explain it definitely is.